What do you do when you are working on giving yourself grace, but you are in an environment that requires you to pick up the pace? I recently started a new job, and while I have experience, I am in a new environment. I'm meeting new people, I am learning new policies and procedures, taking on new responsibilities, and stepping outside my comfort zone and learning new skills. And like many environments, we have to meet certain deadlines, meet certain expectations in order to remain in compliance, right? So what do you do when the reality is you need to pick up the pace? How do you navigate that as an anxious girly? I thought I would share a couple of strategies that I am actively using to help me navigate through this uncomfy season of adjusting. Some of them might seem a little cheesy or unnecessary, but when you do each of these things consistently, they are really helpful and impactful. So stick with me. One thing that I'm doing is practicing gratitude. So on my drives to work, it's easy for me to focus on the negatives or the cons or the things that I'm dreading, right? When I find my thought process drifting that way, I intentionally shift to gratitude. I begin to focus on, well, what is positive about this? I'm thankful for my job and income. I'm thankful for this opportunity. I get to do this, and I am physically and mentally able and capable. The second thing I'm intentional about is how I talk to myself. So with this new job opportunity, I'm working 12-hour shifts, 3 days a week, back to back. This is my first time doing something like that. I'm used to the standard 8 hours, 5 days a week. So this has definitely been an adjustment for me. But as an anxious girly, the way that I approach that thought process, especially on what is my Monday, I approach it as I am going to take this moment by moment instead of day by day or hour by hour or shift by shift. That mental shift is helpful for me. And the reason I like to look at my workday in that way is because as an anxious girly, I struggle with being in survival mode. When I'm preparing to start my workday, I'm going into autopilot as a survival method to get through this 12-hour shift. Because I know that throughout this 12-hour shift, there are going to be certain things that make me uncomfortable. And in order to survive that without freaking out, without having a panic attack, without having an anxiety attack, I feel like I have to go on autopilot and kind of block out certain things and just kind of go through the motions, so to speak. But as an anxious girly, I'm trying to work on giving myself grace and being present. So how do you do that when you're in an environment, in a situation where you're inclined to go on autopilot and to operate in survival mode in order to survive? So having that mental shift has been helpful for me. I am going to approach this moment by moment. And what that really looks like is when I'm driving to work, that is all I'm responsible for in that moment. It's driving to work. I don't need to worry about when I clock in and every other task and responsibility that I'm going to do after that. I just need to focus on driving to work safely, practicing gratitude, listening to my music, and just enjoying the drive. That's all I'm responsible for in that moment. And when I get to work, clocking in. That's all I'm responsible for the amount of time it takes me to clock in. After that, prioritize my tasks, whatever I'm responsible for each moment. That's all I'm concerned about. That's all my attention is driven to. And over time, that helps alleviate unnecessary stress and anxiety when it comes to getting through that 12-hour shift. Now, I was in my second week of training in this new environment, and I was told that I was going to need to pick up the pace. When I was doing the task, I was putting forth my best effort. I tend to put unnecessary pressure on myself as it is. My biggest challenge with anxiety is that I constantly experience an unrealistic sense of urgency. And because of that, I am constantly trying to be intentional about giving myself grace, being patient with myself, slowing down and just being in the moment. It's a challenge, to be honest. But that's why I try to come up with multiple things that I can do consistently to really get control of that. When there is external pressure to keep up the pace, but I know that for my mental and emotional stability, and in order to be effective in what I'm needing to do, I know that I still need to have grace. So how do I do that within the capacity of still needing to meet these realistic expectations? I remember the big picture. I remember that I am a newbie. I am experienced and I'm qualified. That's why I'm here. That's why I was granted the position. But I am new. And there are certain skills and certain things that it's going to take me a moment to catch on and to get familiar with. While speed and pace is important, it's even more important to be accurate. And what would I regret more? Meeting that expectation of pace or being accurate in what I present? And so just kind of keeping those things in mind. And then also reminding myself at the end of the day, I'm going to have to give an account for the work that I produce, not someone else. So even though they're pressuring me to pick up the pace, even though that's realistic and it's true, yes, I'm gonna have to pick up the pace because someone else's role is depending on what I do first. While that's true, they're not going to be able to do their role correctly if what I do isn't accurate. So just reminding myself to look at the big picture and just reminding myself that this is momentary. It's hella uncomfortable, so it feels like an eternity, but it's not. In the grand scheme of things, a couple weeks, a couple months from now, I will have done it multiple times. I'll be more comfortable. I will be more familiar with what I'm doing, and therefore my pace will be a lot more on track with what is expected of me. So it's up to me to remind myself of the grand scheme of things, of the big picture, in order to keep the anxiety and unnecessary stress at bay. How you talk to yourself, what you tell yourself, and the things that you focus on is game changing. That's what really matters and what will really make a difference.